over there have a show on BET on Wednesday nights called Cop Watch America. Y'all can clap. So you see us out there chanting, marching like we just did, but you also get to see the behind the scenes organizing that goes into the fight against police brutality, the fight against systemic racism. So I need everybody to pull their phones out again. One more time, social media. Are you on, if you're on Instagram, put your hand up. Okay, go to your search function. I know a lot more of you are on Instagram to put your hands up. See, when I need energy, Yang Gang. Y'all are so foul. All right, so in your search function, you put Hawk, H-A-W-K, dot Newsome, N-E-W-S-O-M-E, and that way you'll be able to stay abreast on all of our actions and everything that we're doing. With that being said, I have to bring up another brother who's entrenched in this movement, who is a well-known author and advocate on UBI. All of the Yang folks here will recognize him and appreciate him. And if I'm going to get an Andrew Yang hat, it's going to be the one that he's wearing right now. Right on. So, we got 2 speakers left. You guys are holding strong, but we got to keep the energy up. We got to keep the energy up because we are saving and changing lives. Now, we're gonna bring up Scott Santens, but what we're gonna do is bring him in with that chant we invented right here in the Bronx. $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month.
$1,000 a month. $1,000 a month. All right, thank you.
Let's go, Scott.
All right, Yang Gang. All right, so today I just want to kind of play off of what most people here know as the 7 stages of Yang.
Yeah.
And so when a lot of people, they first hear about basic income and they heard it through Yang, you can go through these stages. And so for me, let's go with the 7 stages of basic income and kind of the way that I experienced it in my own experience. So it's stage one for me was technology. And I know that's the same stage for a lot of people. It's how a lot of people are introduced to it. For me, I grew up in like a science fiction household. I grew up wanting Star Trek. That made sense to me. I grew up thinking that technology should advance and actually leave all of us better off. And yet, I've watched my entire lifetime, and technology has not been increasing everybody's lives and enhancing everybody's lives. It's been enhancing a few people's lives. And it's amazing, this chart that hopefully a lot of you are familiar with, called the Great Decoupling. And Carl mentioned this too, how productivity has more than doubled. Like my entire lifetime, we're now twice as productive, but we're not working less. Who's benefiting from this? Right, Jeff Bezos, yeah. The billionaires, the millionaires, they're benefiting. And I read this book called Man Up by Marshall Brain, and that was kind of my big entry. Because he framed this, it was very clear that the way we're going is towards dystopia. As technology advances, and if we do not make the right decisions along the way, dystopia lies that direction. But we can use technology to actually create a utopia, which should not be a bad word. Right. It's weird how it became a bad word. You know, Robert Kennedy, he said that many people look at the world and ask why. And he looked at the world, how it could be, and asked why not. And that's kind of where I came from. Just why can't we use technology to improve our lives? So I read this book called Mana, and the author, after explaining, how much better things could be, he introduced the concept of basic income to me. So I started looking into it. So stage 2 for me was the history of basic income. I was amazed to learn that we were so close in the 70s that Nixon himself proposed a guaranteed income for families, and it passed the House of Representatives twice, in 70 and 71. We were so close. We did experiments all over the country. In the US, we had cities, Seattle and Denver had them. Other cities across the country experimented with negative income tax. Martin Luther King was for it. Milton Friedman was for it. Imagine that. This not left, not right. It's forward. Like, these are ideas. This idea was something that was really considered. And we experimented not only in the US, we experimented in Canada. They essentially eliminated poverty for 5 years in Dauphin, Manitoba. And we experimented in other places too. And it was amazing to me to read through this history. And it was just kind of an unknown history to me. And then that led me to stage 3. Stage 3 being evidence. That's what I really care about. I want to know, does something work? I'm not going to just support something because it sounds good. I really care about if it works. I'm not ideological that way. And sure enough, if you look into the evidence, it works. What we learned from the 70s and the experiments then was that people didn't stop working when they got a basic income. In fact, they started working in ways that were more valuable to them. Like, one of the biggest effects was that you essentially used it as paid maternity leave for new mothers. And it's amazing to me that we still don't even have paid maternity leave. But they were able to use it as that. People were able to actually work less overtime. Students were able to actually focus on going back to school. That's the kind of work that we should want. And the evidence too, we saw that hospitalization rates decreased. In Canada, when they eliminated poverty in Dauphin for 5 years, hospital utilization rates went down almost 10%. In Namibia, in the UBI pilot, crime decreased over 40%. In India, you saw that the villages that had a basic income were 3 times as likely to be self-employed than control villages that didn't. So you look at all this evidence, and it's just impossible to deny that, yeah, this works. The next step for me, the next stage, was philosophy. And fortunately for me, my entry point was Carl Wetterquist. So apparently, we both lived in New Orleans. We didn't know that. I signed up for US Big. And he was just so excited that somebody was actually into basic income in New Orleans. And he gave me a book. His book being The Power to Say No. Freedom is the Power to Say No. And after I read that book, really that just completely, really solidified my views of basic income philosophically. Because, these things go back, and he explained it as well as far as the power to say no and how important that is. And he himself was actually influenced by Thomas Paine. And Thomas Paine, this is a 100 years old argument. Thomas Paine's argument was based on the fact that no one created the earth, and that it was a right, not a charity, that he was fighting for with his plan. A right, not a charity. Why? Because no one created the earth. And when you think about the philosophy too, freedom requires non-domination. Non-domination requires an empowered and protected status. Freedom and liberty, these things just don't happen. They don't just exist. We actually have to create them together. That's, if you look at the Constitution and the preamble, I see that as essentially writing for why a basic income. It goes back that far. Now the next stage for me was actually Diane Pageant. She gave this presentation about TANF at my first Basic Income Guarantee Congress that I went to here in New York back in 2015. And the thing is, I assumed, even after looking at basic income, I assumed that the safety net worked in a way that you think that it should work. It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. It just enraged me to learn, especially just the details of TANF. TANF, for those who don't know, is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. It's a block grant. And in the state of Louisiana, for every 100 families in poverty, 4 are receiving TANF. If you look at SNAP, which is our best program, the food stamps that you get essentially last for around, on average, 3 weeks of every month. You can get them for 3 months, then it expires. And you can get that every 3 years. So, if you think that SNAP exists for everybody and you can just get it, no. If you look at disability, for every 5 people with a disability in this country, 1 person is receiving disability assistance. So if you look at our safety net, it's exactly what it is. It's just a net full of holes that people fall through. Right now, 13 million people in poverty are entirely disconnected from this federal safety net entirely. They're getting nothing. So that was a big one for me, was learning about that, and I think it's important that people understand just how much of a failure our existing safety net is. The next stage for me was learning through my own experience what basic income is. For those who don't know, I crowdfunded my own basic income and have been living with $1,000 per month as my floor every month since January of 2016. Along the way, I learned that this is about security, and it's a word that you don't really understand until you feel it. Like, I had no idea what security felt like until I had it. So when people think about basic income, it's not mainly about the money. It's about the unconditionality of the money. It's that you know that every month you will start with this amount that you can plan on, and you know it's going to be there. And that feeling of security is just life-changing. And the other thing I learned too, besides the importance of unconditionality, is that it enables and empowers us to pursue what is most important to us. And that's what I've been doing. That's why I'm here. The only reason I'm up here at all, the only reason any of you know my name, is because I'm able to actually pursue what I think is important. And that's what I've been pushing for years, is basic income that's important to me. I have that ability, and I want everyone to have that ability too, to pursue what's most important to them. So stage 7 of basic income for me, final stage, was where I am now. And I just think that the world is upside down and backwards, where, let's say somebody says, oh, basic income, won't people stop working? And I immediately think, how much work is not getting done right now because we don't have a basic income?
Preach, brother.
People say, oh, basic income, isn't that too expensive? Can we afford a basic income? And I think, how much will basic income save? How much does it cost to not have a basic income? That's what's really expensive. And so I think now very differently about a lot of things. And I think that Martin Luther King was absolutely right when he described poverty as akin to cannibalism. I think that decades from now, we're going to look back and we're going to think of our lack of basic income as essentially the same thing as eating each other for survival. There's no reason to do it. We don't have to do it. It's a choice. It's a choice that we as a society make together. And this choice that we make, it's something society teaches us that poverty is a moral failure of the individual. And in doing so, it keeps us from understanding that society is a failure, poverty is a failure of society itself. That is what it is. It's an absolute moral failure of society. And so when you think about what is basic income, UBI is not free money. UBI is freedom. UBI is power. UBI is trust. UBI is our natural inheritance. It's our share of the earth. UBI is our technological inheritance. UBI is our just compensation for our data. It's our return on investment for the tax dollars that paid for all of the technology that the corporations are utilizing for their profits for free. We don't get anything back from that. UBI is economic justice. And that's the thing, is that we don't recognize economic rights yet. Basic income is that. We must recognize that in a world where life has a price, that we must extend access to what we need to survive. It's absolute bare minimum. We have to have access to that. If it is not okay to choke someone to death, it is not okay to pull and keep them from breathing and only provide the air back to them.